Hello and welcome back to Bits and Bobs. Today's video is the life and legacy of King Edward III, the monarch of the month for May. So the story begins here with this king, and this is King Edward II, the father of King Edward III. And he was married to, of course, the mother of King Edward III, as we can see here, Isabella of France. So royalty from France and royalty from England. Now on the 13th of November in 1312, Edward III was born. But of course, as he was born, he was known as Prince Edward. The young prince was born and raised in Windsor Castle, near to London, and this is, as you know, of course, a magnificent place and a really historic building. Now, very sadly for the young prince, his father, King Edward II, was actually a very unpopular king and was in fact forced to renounce the throne and pass it on to his son, King Edward III. He was himself later murdered at Berkeley Castle the same year, as he passed the throne on to his young son, aged only 14, when inheriting the throne, and King Edward III was proclaimed king on the 25th of January 1327. And then he was crowned the month after at Westminster Abbey on the 1st of February 1327. So he was a young king, and of course was then crowned, but not given all full power straight away, as only 14 years of age meant he was not fit to rule quite yet. But now he is the king. Let's go through a reign of his key events in the timeline of his reign. So in 1329, King Edward III recognises Scotland as an independent country, an important historical political event. During the early years of his reign, his mother, Isabella of France, had been ruling on his behalf due to his age, but then in 1330, King Edward III got all his full powers, and therefore this angered his mother, as she was no longer as powerful as Edward III, had the full powers and control of the country, now being the full king. In 1332, Edward III divides Parliament into two houses, the Lords and Commons. Of course, the House of Lords and the House of Commons still in existence today in Parliament. Now in 1333, Edward III joined his troops and led them to victory at the Battle of Halidon Hill in Scotland and against Scotland. And Edward III became a very good warrior king. He fought in many, many battles and is known as one of the great warrior kings of England, leading great victories of his troops, and of course fighting alongside them as kings did back then. Now, in 1337, Edward III lays claim to the French crown, of course beginning a very large war. In fact, this was a very large war known as the 100 Years' War between France and England over the rulership of the French crown. In 1344, Edward III establishes the Order of the Garter. This is the most senior order of knighthood, and it was then, as it is now. It was used on many coins and historical and royal emblems. We can see there the sovereign, and of course from a more recent picture here we can see the Order of the Garter still very much in use. In 1346, David II of Scotland attempts to invade England, but is defeated and captured by Edward III and his army and forces. In 1346, the English defeat the French at the Battle of Crecy, one of the most important battles in the 100 Years' War. As you can see there are many, many horses and men all over the fields, and here we can see a picture or a depiction of Edward III himself, right in the middle of the battle, leading his troops to victory, once again the warrior king. In 1347, King Edward III and his troops besiege and capture the city of Calais in France, so again conquering more land and more cities in France as part of the 100 Years' War, and all of Edward III's military success made him very popular back home in England. However, while Edward III was away in France fighting, back home in England, between 1348 and 1350, and he did return to help sort this, was of course the Black Death. Now this was a very tragic and one of the worst health plagues and epidemics in history. The Black Death, very famous, as it was so deadly in fact that it wiped out 1/3 of the English population. So a huge percentage of people and a huge number of people were killed due to the Black Death. This didn't stop the war with France though, and in fact John II, the King of France, was captured, and now at this point most of southern France was captured and conquered by the English forces around the 1350s. In 1357, David II of Scotland is released back to Scotland after spending many, many years in prison for his crimes against the crown. And then in 1360, John II of France is released on promise that he will pay a ransom. However, 4 years later, in 1364, John II now was unable to pay the ransom and returns to England to die. Now, during the 1370s, the French retake some land that was previously captured by the English. And so because of this, the son of Edward III, as you can see here, also having the Order of the Garter, one of the king's sons, a very important military leader, John of Gaunt leads a counterattack against the French, because Edward III himself is too ill to fight at this time. John then returns home to help his father. Now next up we have this signing of the treaty. This is, in 1375, the Treaty of Bruges, and it agrees that the English-owned land in France is secure as long as they don't go for any more and don't try to conquer any more parts of France. Now by this time Edward III has grown old, and his most sort of notable portrait here, how people remember him from the history books, is of course his long white beard, long white moustache, and long white hair. Now Edward III died on the 21st of June in 1377 after a 50-year reign, and he was aged 64 and a half. So a very long reign and long life for someone in the 1300s, and here's his tomb as he's now buried at Westminster Abbey. Now during his long life he had a total of 15 children, as we can see there, all 15 on screen, many of which actually passed away before him, including Edward the Black Prince, his oldest son, dying just months before Edward III himself. So for this reason, the throne was passed to Edward III's grandson, Richard, who became Richard II, and of course succeeded him after his death in 1377. So there we go, Edward III, from the warrior king of England to the old and wise leader of England in the later part of the 1300s. So comment down below what you think of this king, and any extra facts you have about the life and reign of Edward III. Please of course as well subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon for some more coins in the future on Bits and Bobs. Bye for now.